All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order.
Hold on.
Sorry,
Sometimes it takes longer than others.
that's okay.
At the mercy of you two. That's the stuff. It's gone. So. Good.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call the meeting to order at, looks like, 5:34. The meeting, we'll do roll call first, starting down here, please.
Brandon Rose.
Steve Kozik, Joe Ayuki, Mike Russo, Robert Carr,
Vinnie Canadella.
Nick Tombrowski,
Susan Fendick, Debbie Sherman, Nicole Vivian McCrowd,
Brett Olbrys.
Nikki Dykstra, Sue Arkin,
Jack Kylie.
Nick Catalano.
Paula Jensen,
Just a quick thank you for the Board of Finance for attending. We'll do the pledge of allegiance now, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, God, indivisible, liberty, and justice for all. As soon as Dr. Miller's ready, we'll turn it right over to him.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being. I'd like to thank the Board of Finance for joining us. This board budget workshop this evening. This is I think the third or fourth year that we've invited you in. And having you as part of the initial presentation, I think is a good foundation to begin your process of understanding what the education budget is. Your Board of Education. Thank you for having our administrative team with us this evening. I will go over the agenda in a few moments. But the purpose of today's presentation is to give you a quick overview of the budget and then really dive in each cost center to understand each school, athletics, security, facilities, district-wide. We understand that there's a lot of data in front of you this evening. We're not expecting you to read the entire budget book in its entirety tonight. The purpose of tonight is to give an overview of the budget. Each area, there'll be a few minutes for presentation from each cost center director and principal. Give you an opportunity to ask a couple leading questions. We understand that not all questions are going to be answered tonight. So if we're not able to get to every single question, we do ask you to get those questions to Steve and I, and through the finance committee, and the full board will get the answers back to you. And before I do begin to get into the presentation, for the Board of Education, you'll notice that there's next year nameplate is a mug. This is National Board Appreciation Week, the Board of Education. So we're thank you for your dedication to support our students and our staff. So this is our way of saying thank you to each of you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
So as I said, we have a pretty tight agenda this evening. What we're trying to do is to move through each cost center. Our goal is to be done around 8:15. That includes each principal having an opportunity to present and share the major highlights from their budget. We understand once again that the budget book, there's a lot of data in there, and we're expecting you to take it back this evening and review it and come back to us with any questions you might have. As we go through the process, the finance committee will be meeting at least more than once, and then there'll be an opportunity for the full board to convene and answer questions and ask detail in our first meeting in February. Before we get into the actual what the numbers look like, it's important to hit the pause button and to recognize that as a district, we've had a lot of successes, and first and foremost, I want to thank the staff of Quaker Farms and GOES. This is the third year in a row that GOES was selected by the state of Connecticut as a school distinction. That does not come by accident. That comes by hard work by the teachers, but also from a dedicated and aligned budget. That starts with the Board of Education and funded by the town, by the Board of Finance, the overall town. That those resources went towards a high quality education that was recognized by the state as a school of distinction. And that, as I said, does not come by accident. That's resource wise and work by our staff. And I want to thank everybody that was involved with that. We also dedicate a lot of resources the last 2 years on science and reading. We implemented a brand new reading program, K-5, last year. We doubled down on that, saying that in order for our teachers to have high quality job embedded professional learning to continue to grow in their application of how to teach literacy in their elementary schools, we hired a new K-5 literacy coach. That was one of our major highlights in the budget this past budget cycle that went into effect this spring or this September. We've had a lot of successes with that so far. And that came from the investment that we made last year for this year into reading. We've also done significant work in special education. We created specialized programs that allow us to do cost avoidance rather than having high special expenses of sending students out of district for out of district placements. We've invested in programs to keep the students in the district, and that saved the district money. In addition to those internal programs, we recognized that we needed to evolve our 18 to 22-year-old program. We partnered with Monroe, and we now have a collaborative approach with another school district to support those students that are 18 to 22 years old. And then finally, we invested in athletics this past year. We were able to evolve our athletic program from a high school and a middle school, 2 distinct programs, into one unified 6-12 athletic program. And you'll hear from our athletic director this evening. That's paid dividends in creating a unified approach, getting the 2 schools in the same page, but also working with Parks and Rec and youth sports here in town to create a unified approach for students to be engaged in athletics. Each year, the budget is built around a zero-based budget philosophy where we build it from ground up, and we really stay with that philosophy. And in that philosophy is a strategic look at how we continue to evolve and grow our district. And in this year's budget, there's one primary ask. There's one primary increase to the budget that we're looking to do, and that's the addition of a new elementary school administrator. And we're looking at it for 2 primary reasons. One, our special education numbers have been increasing. We have a higher number of students that are either qualifying for special education or in special education. As a result, that has had an increased burden on the elementary school principals to attend PPTs, to ensure the integrity of the special education services, to monitor and to support difficult, challenging behaviors related to special education, as well as being key instructional leaders in their school. At the same time, the state of Connecticut has passed and is requiring that all school districts implement a school climate policy. That policy requires an extensive amount of work from a challenging behavior perspective. That's additional work that every time there is a allegation of a challenging behavior that school administrator needs to double down and do an investigation like you do with bullying and racial discrimination. That additional work is more time intensive than an administrator can handle by him or herself at elementary school level. So we're looking to add this new elementary school administrator to alleviate that burden so that each principal can spend more time as the instructional leader that they need to be in their school, while providing the additional support from a special education lens and a challenging behavior lens. But I think it's also important to note that a lot of the challenging behaviors that we see in the school, while they are increasing in threshold, a lot of those are integrated with students with special needs. So to have an administrator that has a special education background to support the elementary school principal in that area, and when that's integrated with challenging behaviors, all under one scope, makes sense to us. And you'll hear more from Dr. Karanowski and the elementary school principals and how that can roll out and support their needs. At the same time, we wouldn't want to be fiscally responsible. We don't want to just keep adding to the budget. We wanted to say, how can we evolve our current structure without having a impact drastically in the budget. We were able to add this administrator with just a net increase of $8,205. How did we do that? We did that by taking the coordinated student conduct, restructuring that position, restructuring the supervisor of special education, creating a more narrow scope for the K-12 supervisor of special education to a 6-12 focus, and incorporating the coordinated student conduct into that scope. And then hiring the second administrator for the elementary school and having that person take over the special education functions that the supervisor had been doing K-12. As I said, if you have more questions on detailed how that could work out, we can do so this evening, as well as to the finance committee for the next meeting. But essentially, this major ask, this major initiative for the district is to support special education, to support the challenging behavior school climate law. And we're doing so with just a net increase of $8,000 to the budget. There might be questions in terms of what does it look like in terms of the capacity? How much are we looking from an administrative perspective in the district? We take a look in the budget book, we've included a table in there that shows the comparison between our school district and comparable school district on the number of administrators that we have. And you will see that we have fewer administrators than other districts that are comparable to us. In addition to the operating budget, you will also find that we are discussing the capital budget this evening. The capital budget is supposed to go to the town by February. Typically in this meeting in January, we present the capital improvement plan to the board. And we ask the board to make a motion and to vote on the capital improvement plan during our budget workshop or the last meeting in January. This happens to be a combination of both of those. We recognize that there might be some feedback and tweaks that you want to make to that capital improvement plan. Typically that would be done at our board meeting, and you would vote on the plan reflective of the changes that you make during the meeting. We would then revise the document and send it on to the Board of Finance and to the town. There is a 5-year look in the budget book on our capital improvement. The 4 major asks that we're having for next year. One actually is an addition that you might not have seen before, and that's technology. Some of you that have been on the board for an extensive amount of time might have seen technology in the past. But in the last few years, we have only seen more facility stuff. The wireless access points, the network infrastructure in our closets are dated and reaching end of life. So we're looking to do a major overhaul district-wide of all of our network resources. That would cost $540,000. We're looking to add a generator for GOES. GOES not only, if the generator is to go out, where there's no HVAC, there's no power in this building, but it also serves as a communication hub for the districts. So if this school goes dark, it impacts the security district-wide. We're also asking for a first grade playground. That playground that currently is in place needs to be replaced from a perspective that it no longer satisfies the safety needs of the students in that school. And we'd like to replace that playground next year. And finally, the middle school track is an unusable facility. It needs to be repaired. We do not have our students use that track right now because there would be concerns of students physically getting hurt there. When students do need to use the track, we take them off-site to the high school to another facility, and there's additional cost to that. So our capital improvement plan asks for the track to be upgraded for next year. There are 3 major buckets that have resulted in the increase that we're asking for next year. The first is contractual salary increases, and that's equivalent to $1.2 million from a salary perspective. Second is medical insurance. While we have made smart business decisions the last 3 years, one changing carrier, and then this past year changing to high deductible plan, we are still seeing increase of our health insurance. Right now, we've budgeted an 8% increase. So the hope is that as we go through the process, that may come down. As a matter of perspective, I was meeting with superintendents from other districts on Friday. Some other districts have a 18%, one district is a 24%, and other districts a 34% increase in their health insurance. So the decisions that we've made the past few years to switch carrier and go to high deductible plan has put us in a favorable position, more favorable than a lot of other districts in the area. based on the decisions that we've made. So while there's an increase, we have minimized that increase drastically by those decisions that we've made. And then final electricity, we're seeing that our rates have gone up. Our hope is that the additional charges by Eversource will go down and not be renewed on April. But we've also seen an increase in electrical rates because of the new HVAC system in this building, because now we're running was not just heating just for the cold months of the year, but air conditioning is now on 12 months a year when the heat is not on. That has an additional expense from electrical standpoint. We're seeing a rise of $240,000 based on our calculations, and anticipated Quaker going limit at some point over the next year. So altogether, that is equivalent to a $1.8 million increase in just those three areas. So overall, our budget ask for next year is $36,859,370. That's equivalent to a 4.79% increase. Now, that increase is a $1.6 million increase. So we're actually, those three things I just mentioned are more than the increase that we're asking for. How did we get there? We went through the budget and we found cost avoidance. We found ways to reduce the budget by taking cost reductions here and there and taking a look at how we can accomplish the business of the district in smart financial decisions in order to accommodate those increases that we have elsewhere. What that means is that we've taken risks in the budget. And you will find in the budget book that we've isolated and identified what some of those risks are. There's opportunities there, but there's also risks. It's important to note that as we go through the budget process, the more we cut from the budget, the more risk the district will have to absorb into our business practices for next year. So at this point, we are going to move on to the high school and then the middle school and then athletics and then continue on as the evening progresses. So I'm going to invite Mrs. O'Brien, who is our new principal at high school, so the Board of Education knows her, Board of Finance. Mrs. O'Brien.
Hi, everybody. Heather O'Brien. I have the distinct honor of serving as the high school principal at Oxford. So I'm 5.5 months in, and about 2 months in, I think Howard called and said it's budget season. So here we are. If you're referring to your budget book, I'm going to focus the majority of today's conversation around 27, there's tiny little numbers at the bottom. So just so you know, this was very much a collaborative effort with the staff at OHS. The administrative team sat down with our department chairs and really constructed what we believe to be the best budget that will ensure continued success for our students. I think we stand at a crossroad where we are trying to blend both consistency with innovation. And that those things being considered, we're coming in at about a 2.4% increase from last year's budget. So we have some major initiatives, and I do know at the point in a future board meeting, we'll probably be back at the table to talk more about the first bullet. But we are on deck for our NEASC collaborative conference. The NEASC visiting team will be present with us next spring, probably about this time next year. And while this cost is not directly being pulled from the Oxford High School budget, it's going to come from district services. What this speaks to is the need to kind of continue on the path that we're on and build also from the path that we're on to ensure that we have what we need in place to meet the needs of all students, which ensures our programs as well as the supplies to run those programs. In total, we're looking for an increase of some instructional equipment as well as supplies. Some of those are renewable. For example, with science classes, the need to run labs from year to year, there's a need to replace chemicals and equipment, as well as the lab quests, the programs that we use to foresee those labs and see them through. We have some minor furniture requests. For example, one of our math teachers has requested tables similar to these for flexible seating, as well as some problem solving to ensure a more collaborative approach to mathematics in her classroom. And all of that work is really intended to showcase what it is that's going on at the high school and receive feedback from the NEASC team that'll help us move forward. So that in total is between $4,000 and $5,000 for our collaborative conference visit, which then 2 years out from that would be our 10-year accreditation, which is going to come in at a little bit higher price tag of $10,000 to $12,000, depending on how many team members they send to our evaluation. Again, my job, Stephanie's job, AJ's job, really at the high school level, we are helping to architect the greenhouse. And so we're looking to build and sustain the connections And we're trying to keep it as viable and sustainable as we can. So all things considered, I think, given the rising cost of anything in this day and age, a 2.4% increase, while is an increase, I still think kind of positions us pretty fairly for the requests that the teachers need to kind of support teachers. Students, I should say. We're still working to build upon the second bullet point speaks to our library media center. We didn't have a full-time library media specialist, in years previous. So with our new library media specialist, she's working to build, modernize, as well as curate some necessary resources. So she's put together a proposal for some new databases as well as hard copy textbooks. She's looking at creating a makerspace in the library to also kind of pique the students' interest on what it is that's possible outside of just reading, although I'll settle for just reading. So there's a slight cost associated with continuing to maintain as well as upgrade our library media center. And then one of the big line items that was new to the budget for the high school is really specific to our administrative events and awards. For anyone who sat in on my interview process over this summer, I'm very much a culture-oriented person. And it's kind of my job, Stephanie's job, the building admin leadership job to kind of create the vehicle that will help us sustain connections. I think food is a great morale boost. I think on the days when we have half-day release for teachers or full-day release for teachers, breakfast is certainly an incentive, as is lunch. I would argue too that Teacher Appreciation Week comes but once a year, and I think we could do a lot to support the staff and their morale by continuing to bolster the support that we afford them on a daily basis. Food is expensive, so I think over the course, if we're estimating, I have the biggest staff, so I think we feed roughly about 80 to 85 people, depending on who's with us on a daily basis. So if you average about $10 a person, you're looking at anywhere between $4,500 and $6,500 if we were to provide a meal each day. It seems like a large ask, but I think in the grand scheme of things, we take care of our teachers, they subsequently take care of our students. And there is a book, I'm gonna go on the record, it does say if you feed the teachers, they won't feed the students. I mean, it's kind of funny, but also kind of true. But I am a big proponent of culture, and I want to continue to build and sustain the culture that exists. I have an incredible staff, we have incredible students, and the work that's currently underway is really positioning us towards a place to continue to be really successful, but also to build upon what's necessary to stay competitive and to give kids what they need, regardless of where they're headed beyond our four walls. I'll take questions.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
My friend, Mrs. Roland is the principal of the middle school now.
Hi, everyone. I'm Celia Leck, principal of Oxford Middle School. My presentation or my explanation to you is short. Dear Board of Ed, dear Board of Finance, I'm not asking for anything this year. The end. No, but seriously, I'm really not, because in recent years, we've asked for new staff, we've asked for new resources. This year, we are just really going to capitalize on the recent year's budget investments. In the next year, we aren't asking for anything new, except for some heart rate monitors for PE classes, for our PE wellness classes. But instead, we are, we're working with what we have, and we're capitalizing on those investments. If you remember, you helped us last year get and I'm sorry, pages 20 and 21 and 22. Last year, you helped us with getting an additional PE teacher, additional music, additional library. So we have the staff that we need. Now it's just, we need to take that and we need to continue on our efforts to focus and refine and just keep getting better with what we currently have. Yeah. If anyone has any questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, you're going to see me sneak out. I have to pick my daughter up. Well, we'll be stranded, so I have to sneak out. Thank you.
And I'm gonna introduce Mr. Fisher is our athletic director. He joined us in beginning of August, end of July. And he embraced the concept of aligning our middle school and high school athletic program together. So welcome.
Thank you. 40-41, and if you want to look at the actual numbers, 92. There's a lot of that. Thank you for, pardon? AJ Houston, Andre Houston, I'm the athletic director for high school and middle school. So as Dr. Miller alluded to, I was brought in as the first athletic director that is full-time covering both high school and middle school, working to form a greater community between 6 to 12, as well as involving our local youth athletics programs. So what I want to focus on, our major initiatives are equipment and supplies. Equipment and supplies to me ties in with health and safety. A lot of what I'm asking for within my budget deals with the safety and the health of our student athletes all across the board. Whether it's from concussion studies that have been done, helmet protection, our cheer team needs new mats, those are two of the larger pieces that I did ask for in the budget. So if you see the supplies a little elevated, it's about safety, not about, it was through a very detailed inventory of what we have. I was able to cut back on spending on, the hard items like baseballs, basketballs, some footballs, in order to make sure that we're doing what we can as a district to make sure our student athletes are safe and protected from the possibility of injury. Transportation was a major undertaking. It was probably the number one thing that I was asked to focus on when I got in. So we've been able to secure a phenomenal family-owned transportation company for high school and middle school. It is a little more expensive because they do charge any trip over 4 hours is $75 additional, whereas an All-Star Transportation was a flat $350. But All-Star couldn't guarantee us that they would be able to afford our student transportation to and from every meet. So I feel that extra cost is vital, and it's worth more than the inconvenience of having to notify parents that a game's canceled last minute. Community engagement is a big thing for me. So what I am going to try to implement next year, and this is another reason why transportation is a little bit high, is having high school and middle school attend college athletic events together. So boys soccer, middle school and high school will attend a collegiate soccer game. Same thing with girls soccer, all sports, all throughout, working together, and sending coaches to professional development together between the middle school and the high school. Training and development, there's not much that we're asking for there in terms of an increase. The only uniforms we are asking for are for our unified sports team. Our unified sports team is, statewide recognized. They are absolutely phenomenal. They had a game today. It's great to watch them participate. And, I think that they need this type of the new uniform, the financial piece from us as much as every single sport that we have going forward. I don't know if that's been the case in the past. So, that's where I stand. If you have any questions about any of those numbers you look at on page 92, there is an overall 7.3% increase. The majority of that is from the equipment that I asked for, from the busing, because like I said, the busing is a little bit higher, as well as the dues and fees for the middle school. And I know you see that 685% increase. Part of the reason for that is, for some reason, I've been working with Sylvia, the dance competitions, cheer competitions, and event workers were not in last year's budget for some reason, but they have been in years prior. So I don't know where that snafu was, but that's why that number looks so outrageous, just so you know.
I think the other number to focus on here too is that the full AD salary was not in last year's budget. So it's a large number. It's additional $45,000. So that 7.3% is inflated by that number. So just be aware of that when you're looking at the detail.
Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Uniforms, are we on a schedule to replace by team, or how are we doing?
So the way the uniforms work is every team has home and away uniforms. And there is a new uniform that is purchased every 4 years. And the reason that happens is so that every student athlete who participates in 4 years will get a chance to wear a new uniform. We are not due for any this upcoming year, but next year we will be. So I'm hoping that some of these, the main costs for supplies that I'm asking for this year will not need to be spent every year, so we're gonna be able to balance those out.
AJ, can you tell us a little bit more about the mats for the gymnastics game?
Yeah, so,
Explain how long it's been.
yeah, so the cheer mats that our high school team uses are 1.5-inch mats. So that's relatively thin compared to what they use at competition and what higher level cheer teams use. High level cheer teams use 2-inch mats because it's more absorbent. Our mats, from my understanding, doing some research to athletic directors past, have never been replaced. So they were, I wanna say 2010 was the first year we actually had a cheer team. Because, the school opened and then it took them a couple of years to establish. And they've never been replaced. So we have the original cheer mats that over years and years and years of stunting and cartwheels and tumbles and spins, naturally have wear and tear on them. So we're asking for the 2-inch, and it's been shown to be healthier on the knees, the ankles, the hips, as well as the falls with concussions and, head trauma and things of that nature. And if we're gonna replace uniforms, for football teams and basketball teams and baseball teams and get new equipment when new technology becomes available, I think it's only right that the cheer team is able to be afforded the same. Yes.
There was a mention in the capital plan to change or fix the GOES track.
Yes.
How would you fix it for just $20,000?
Oh, I'll be honest with you, that's not a quote that I received.
Yeah, I was surprised to see how little that was.
So that's something that I'll be working with facilities, in order to come up with quotes and see exactly what needs to be done. So I can't answer that question for you. I can do more research on my own and
Maybe Dexino might be able to answer that.
Okay, I just have a concern because kids are still using that track, even though they're not doing actual meets on it. They still do practices for cross country and for the track team. And when cross country does their meets, they end up starting on that track and ending on that track. So I think it needs to be a priority to make sure that's safe for the kids.
absolutely. I haven't been here for a track season yet. And whenever I was down here for cross country, they were on the baseball field starting over there. And running through GOES and then down the hill and around that way, so. But no, I absolutely think that's a priority.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. All right, I'm sorry that I have to skate off. We do have a home high school event tonight that I have to be at, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now, our dynamic electrical drill. They are gonna present together. We're going forward.
Good evening. A lot of familiar faces, but for anybody that doesn't know, I'm Amy Missett, principal at GOES. Good evening, I'm Rachel Pace, principal at Picker Farms, and we'll be referring to pages 12 and 17 in your packets. We won't be quite as short as Ms. Duet, but we'll be relatively short. We as well are not really asking for new things. We have no new real initiatives outside of the administrative position. So we have a lot of initiatives that we are looking at refining and maximizing. So our budget, anything in terms of supplies, equipment, textbooks, really is continuing to support ongoing initiatives. And that has kept our numbers for those items in line or even less than last year. The major drivers for our individual budgets as well are those large staffing and more district level initiatives or district level drivers. But we did want to share with you some of the things that our budget is supporting, those ongoing initiatives. So one of those, as Dr. Miller referred to, is our new ELA program. So we're in our second year of HMH into reading.
And I know we talked about it last year, but no one box program is gonna meet the needs of all of our learners. So a lot of our work this year, now that we're in year 2 and teachers understand what the program is refining it and writing curriculum around it. So we are supporting that work through some supplemental resources, ongoing professional learning, and making sure that there's enough collaboration time for our new K-5 literacy coach with our staff. And through that collaboration time this year, we're starting to see ELA and writing units come out of these new materials that the teachers are really, really proud of and really happy to use. So we want to make sure that we continue to support that work.
Our budgets also include ongoing building upgrades to both classrooms and hallways within both of our schools. Some of these improvements including upgrading just simple classroom furniture, so from desks to actual work tables, so it's just a different dynamic in the classroom. Elementary signage over at GOES, purchasing hallway bulletin boards. So in last year's budget, if you recall, you did approve bulletin boards. I know it might sound silly, but bulletin boards in a hallway just made things look, more exciting. Kids love to experience walking through the hallways. So we did fund bulletin boards throughout the entire second grade hallway. So of course, once our first grade teachers saw these wonderful, beautiful bulletin boards, they also would like them in their hallways for next year. So again, a gradual release. So we did second grade this year, we'll do first grade this year. Kindergarten had already had bulletin boards. So again, that's just another upgrade to the building. Again, simple furniture as replacing or adding additional bookcases, filing cabinets, teacher desks. I mean, these things have been in the schools for quite some time. So again, it comes to a point where you have to replace them. Or again, teachers are asking for certain things like different organizers. We want to make sure that we're appropriately helping the teachers get the materials that they want. Again, with these simple improvements to the physical environment, our goal is really to create that sense of community within our buildings and that supportive learning environment while also boosting staff morale. So again, simple bulletin boards, it just makes teachers and students and families just happy. They want to be there and it's exciting to see. So simple things like that, we want to make sure that we are supporting them moving forward.
Along with support of the new ELA program and science of reading. We also last year, again this year and continuing into next year, will have a strong focus on SRBI or RTI, response to intervention, multi-tiered systems of support. There's so many different acronyms and names for it, but the bottom line is we know how important it is in the early years to make sure that we're not letting that gap widen and we're not letting kids fall behind. So that's something that our teams are working together to make sure we have a really strong system in place. And part of having that system in place is making sure that we have the correct assessments so that we can really leverage that assessment data to pinpoint really exactly which students need what. And then when we figure out who needs what, we need to make sure that we have the resources to give them that. And I wish I could say that it all came in a nice package like an HMH reading program, but it doesn't. They're not huge costs, but again, if we are going to expect our teachers to really step up, learn new things, try new things, take a risk and, get our students where they need to be, we have to make sure that they have the materials they need to do that. They don't have time to be searching the internet for something to print out. So that is part of our ongoing budget planning to make sure that we're supporting that system. Ideally, we'll be sending kids to the middle school and beyond that don't have that gap to close. That's our ultimate goal.
In regards to staffing, we are looking to maintain the current certified and non-certified staff that we currently have. A focus of the district for many, many years has been always to keep class size low, especially at the early elementary. For the past several years, we've done a really great job at that. So again, this does not have an impact to budget, but I do think it's worth mentioning that for next school year, we want to shift a first grade teacher to second grade. Just as last year, we moved the kindergarten teacher over to first. Now we're going to be shifting that first grade teacher over to second grade. We want to make sure that we're maintaining class size of about 19 right now. So that would be maintained for next year. And then there would be a teacher shift from third grade to fourth grade, and that would keep class size at approximately 20 to 21 students. So there is this big bubble. So my first grade right now has 132 students. That's a very large class compared to some of the other classes. So we want to make sure that we're maintaining that low class size. And again, kudos to the board and to the town for maintaining low class size across K-5.
I think you heard the other administrators speak to this, but really our budget in addition to these few initiatives is really just built to make sure our teachers have day-to-day what they need to do their job. They work very hard. They're very dedicated. They definitely put in more than their 6.5 hours, 9 months a year. So, one of the things we can do as administrators is make sure that they don't have to go searching for the tools or beg parents for those tools and supplies. So our budget is built based on teacher requests and, what we know is needed to kind of run the building day to day. And then we just briefly wanted to speak to the big budget.
So as mentioned earlier, by Dr. Miller, we are in total support of the new elementary administrative position. We do feel that this will help significantly with our disciplinary issues that we do have, provide that social emotional support that Dr. Miller had mentioned, and to oversee the special education programs and services for students, both at Quaker Farms and GOES. As you all know, we do wear many hats as elementary principals. Just as in the upper grades, we want to be instructional leaders. Again, Dr. Miller had mentioned that, and to make sure that we are accelerating student growth in general. And to do that, we need to be in the classrooms. And with this position, that would help us do that even more. We get in there as much as we can, but if you have one issue, that can take several hours, if not days, to investigate. And it's only myself, it's only Amy. So again, we want to make sure that we're in those positions of instructional leaders with the curriculum and the planning and the meeting with teachers and just getting into classrooms more and getting into the lunchroom and, trying to be outside at recess. It's really hard to do all of those tasks while obviously doing one investigation that could take quite some time.
And those are really the things that drive our strategic planning and school improvement for the future. It's hard to plan a budget, it's hard to build a schedule, it's hard to really decide these are the things that our building needs to grow and make these students succeed when it's hard to get out of your office some days. So our goal is to have a shared position that can support us in some of those day-to-day investigations or issues, as well as support with the special education side of things. There are some weeks where I may sit in 6 to 7 PPTs. If you think an hour each across 1 week, one person, that's almost a full day eaten up sitting in meetings, which are very important meetings, but that's time that I can't get to anything else. And the same is true for Rachel. So we don't want to be hands off of anything. We just want some support so that we can get to some of the real drivers for school improvement and being instructional leaders to move our schools forward. Any questions?
So I'm in favor of the new admin position. I'm curious how it's gonna work. So my wife's doing teacher leader in Milford. I know that the stress points in the building, drop off, pick up, lunch, and honestly, anytime the kids are out at recess or transitions in general. How would one person do that across 2 buildings? They can only be in one spot at a time. Is it realistic to have one person split, or is this a position that's better meant for, one per building, or if we invest in one and it goes to a building? Are we setting ourselves up for success or failure by trying to split them?
I would love to have one at each. What I can say is, speaking from experience, when I was in Derby, we shared a dean across the 2 elementary schools. I had the larger school and typically the more active school, shall we say, based on some of the programs that were in my building. So he typically was 2 days a week in my building, 2 days a week in the other building. The 3rd day was supposed to be kind of a split or a flex day, but it usually ended up in my building. That's where the needs were. Were there days that I wish that he was there? Absolutely. But I do think, we can manage on our own. The buildings are not falling down.
Right.
It's not chaos. It's more a matter of, are we being able to do our jobs to the fullest of their potential? So even just getting one, I think, would be a huge lift, and we can be strategic about, these are the days that you're scheduling a bunch of meetings. These are my meeting days. We won't always have somebody at lunch or recess, but those are days that if I know I don't have somebody else in the building that day, I don't schedule meetings around that time. Like, I definitely think there are ways we can work around it.
So just thinking about PPTs at Quaker, like we typically schedule our PPTs at 8:30 and 3, and I have one every day this week at 8:30 and every day at 3 o'clock. So I think just the scheduling piece, and it's not to say that if this particular person is over at GOES, I'm still going to obviously go to the PPT. So it's not a hands off. So I think any additional help, and Amy and I work so collaboratively together that we can definitely make that work. I don't foresee that as being an issue. We'll obviously pick up the pieces that, if that person's not here, I'm gonna attend the meetings, I'm gonna do what I need to do. If there's a behavioral issue and I've been doing it for quite some time, it will get done. But just that extra help, it's just we need to make sure that those particular times are definitely supported.
We could always make a fast runner a requirement on the job description.
Go kart.
Yes, they can drive the gator back and forth.
So when I talked with you guys in the fall, was basically what we talked about.
Yeah.
So we talked about the fact that your schedules are consumed by disciplinary, PPT, that type of stuff. I am also in favor of this position, but I just want to point out, and this is nothing against the high school or the middle school, but the high school and the middle school, they have assistant principals that can take on these roles to help out their principals. Our younger kids at Quaker Farms, and here it goes, they don't have assistant principals here, so they're already at a trying to play catch up because they're not only are doing the principal duties, but they're also doing assistant principal duties as well. So, my God. Anybody else?
Yeah, just to add, so I mean, I have a son that's been in special ed since he was 3, so we're going on 15, 14 years in the kind of environment, not just school, but before school. And I see all the work in the data, in the reports, and the meetings that all you guys attend, right? It is taking away from the classroom and moving the district forward. So I guess the question is, this person would be at PPTs, facilitate with the special ed case person, making sure we're hitting the right marks, we're in compliance, things like that. And then on the disciplinary side, can you explain today, maybe a day in the life of an example where what today is like, I have to handle disciplinary action. Now with the state mandates, we don't know exactly, what does that look like? Like, how does it change from, I'm a principal when I handle disciplinary thing to now the state comes down, of course, we love the state of Connecticut, right, with all their mandates. You must file this, that, and the other, follow up and investigate. What does that really look like in real life?
So it definitely changes day to day. It could be anything from, something happened at recess, kids come into my office, it's a quick conversation, we move on. Those are the nice, easy ones that you like, right?
Right.
But then there are times where, and this is, I think, what you're alluding to, because it's going to get more and more, not that we don't take safety seriously now, but there are going to be guidelines where we have to respond in certain ways to things, regardless of the age of the child. So, even last week, there was an instance where I had a report at the very end of the day, they're walking out to the buses, a student says, another student told me he has a weapon in his room. So now kids are leaving, I have to make phone calls, I have to make sure that everything's safe, there's lots of, nobody's out in the building. It all turned out to be nothing, it was a story from, a story that the kid made up, and the student overheard it. But that was 2.5 hours of investigating to make sure that there was no risk to anybody. And the same type of thing happens if it's a potential bullying or harassment situation. So that then add on to that, now you have layers of paperwork that are required, parent notices, who's the primary investigator versus the secondary investigator. And for us, there is no secondary, so we have to call Megan or Linda. Those things don't happen every day, but when they do, like Rachel alluded to before, your day that you had planned out now goes to the next 4 or 5 hours are all an investigation, and I'm still doing follow-up work the next day.
Right, so now, I mean, safety always first, we do the right thing, handle it, reach out. But now what the state component is, there's a lot more of additional follow through, additional investigation, formats and paperwork, right?
There's a potential that we will have to investigate things that are considered challenging behavior. So right now, a parent can call and say, you know what, my kid's coming home saying that this kid's being really disruptive in class, it's bothering him. We take that seriously, we investigate. In the future, that could be an official complaint from a parent that needs to be investigated the same way a bullying investigation would. So it's no longer me going and having a talk with that kid or talking with the teacher and putting a little plan in place. Now, everything has to be
Documented with the state and submitted.
So there's a lot of
There's
formalities.
a lot of extra
Yes.
admin work, right?
Yes.
You're still gonna follow through and get the right outcome. There's a lot of overhead now.
Right, and right now we do that with bullying investigation. This adds on the same type of layers that we have with bullying now with challenging behavior. So it's additional steps that need to be done across the board. And that burden takes away from the day-to-day that's
Right.
currently taking place.
Right, so already there might have not been enough time to take advantage of the situation, which is grow teachers or add values to the programs. Now it's actually gonna be a deficit going the other way potentially, even
Right.
further.
Right.
Without this role.
And just to clarify too, we want somebody who has a special ed background, but by no means want to step out of that realm. I think I speak for both of us. I enjoy being a part of those meetings. Those are all of our kids. But we want another person who we can trust to sit through those meetings and know that the right kinds of decisions are being made and the processes are being followed. So that would be an important piece of it, but
Makes sense.
we're not looking for somebody to kind of take over that,
Right.
that part, but
Still engaged, but you need a little bit of lift.
I have a hard time letting go sometimes.
Well, same way.
While we recognize that finances are tight in the district and in the town this year. I hope you can hear that this is a true need for us. That we have carved out this as the single most important priority for this budget. This is the only new thing that we're asking. We've found ways to do this without adding that much to the budget. And if there are cuts that need to be made, those cuts, I hope, will be around in other areas and leave this new position intact because this need is so important for our students, our staff, our administrators next year.
And I think in the past, we've proven through some of what you've said in prior years and this year. We get a return on those investments.
Yes.
Right? We monitor it closely, we see the results. And it pays back.
Yes.
I actually have a question for Megan. What would you say the impact for this role might free you up? I mean, it sounds like you're the secondary for two buildings. Well, but it more likely, if they need a secondary, you're it, like you're the default. What would you say the impact currently is on your like week to week? Is it a 10% impact, a 5%?
Like to Amy's point, it is kind of honestly day to day. But there's always a phone call, or even if I'm not doing the investigation, I'm doing a follow-up, or hey, this happens, I'm doing that, like just letting me know what's going on and then triaging some things. So it would alleviate a lot of investigation pieces. Although it's going to, with the challenging behavior, might increase a little bit, but at least this additional person could, do some of that work and check in. So I would say 5 to 10%, depending on, some weeks are much busier with investigations than others.
Full moons and such,
Holidays, yeah, so it would definitely help alleviate in that regard.
Quick question. So between the I don't know who this goes to. Between the high school and the middle school, you have 4 administrators, the VP and the principal. And we also funded last year the additional role to do behaviors. So that's 5. And now between these 2, it's going to be a total of 3 people. So 2 schools, 3 people, 2 schools, 5 people. Can someone explain the difference, what the difference is?
I'm gonna go to Dr. Miller, like the student conduct has
Sure.
resigned in January.
Right, we refilled it for the rest of the school year, but the goal here is to take that coordinated student conduct and fold that into the current supervisor special education role. So we're not adding, we're kind of absorbing that into it. You have to take a look at the additional complexities that you have at the middle school and high school with more departments, more oversight. I mean, the high school alone had, you heard before, the number of staff members that have in that building far exceeds any other school. So in terms of evaluations that administrators need to do for teachers, there's a need, and there's a rationale why high school typically has more administrators than you have in other schools in the district.
I'm kind of confused. So reorganizing the coordinator of student conduct, which was Mr. Becca, who left, and now it's Mr. Rich.
Yes.
Yes.
But now he's no longer being called the student conduct, he'll be called the supervisor.
No, that position is gonna phase out at the end of this year. If this is approved for this, and the supervisor of special education position will fold into it with a little bit of differences, but that would support that piece of it. So we're removing the coordinator of conduct position.
So middle school and high school end up net neutral, right?
That person
Right.
going to.
Yes.
So it's the same, it's basically the same position, just moving from the high school and middle school to the lower grade.
Well, different because we're asking for an administrative position when that was a stipend teacher position.
Oh,
So. The guy that took over for Mr. Becker, Mr. Rich, he will go back to his original duties. He's only taking over from now until the end of the
that I
year.
did not realize.
And then that position is gonna go away. And then we're gonna add the. Can't remember what it's called, but we're gonna add the position we're talking about. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that'll be called supervisor of special education, and that's what you guys are.
We haven't finalized the name of the elementary school administrator. We're calling it an elementary school administrator right now. We'll have to, as we go through the process, finalize exactly what we're gonna call it. Last year, the name for student conduct evolved as we went through the process. It didn't end up where we started. And that, I envision the same thing with this new administrator as well.
The supervisor of special education would remain as that position, would support mainly 6 through 12, but other initiatives can, our transition piece. There's more state initiatives around transition and training. And then the pre-K would be supported through that supervisor role as well. So that would be not necessarily something the elementary administrator would be doing in pre-K, that would be the supervisor of special education.
Performance standpoint, how did that position work out? You know, I've
Right.
never heard anything.
So that's an excellent question, Vic, but it's not really, geared towards the budget. If you have a quick answer.
What I can say is that we were seeing an improvement in student behaviors and attendance. It's hard to evaluate a position mid-year because that's doing something that just left. And we're switching to somebody else that's taking the position now. But for the initial view that we had, there were positive, and we can continue to explore that with the personnel finance committee in terms of how that rolled out. But as Bobby said, let's kind of focus and stay with the numbers right now.
Okay, but from a budget standpoint, excuse me, for 18, is that if we're gonna continue this position for the rest of the year, we're gonna pay the money. We're gonna rename it next year, whatever you call it. Okay, it's still an expense, it's still a budget item.
Yep.
And I think it's a fair thing. Does it work?
From what we've
And
seen so far,
we can put it into another meeting.
yes,
But
from
the
what
thing,
we've.
I think the audience and the public wants to know, do these functions work?
Yes, from
And
what,
how do we grade them?
from what we've seen so far, that position has made a difference, which is why we're not eliminating it, why we're folding it into another position, why we're creating another administrator at elementary school level to handle some of those same type of responsibilities at elementary school level. Yes, we've seen an impact on student behavior, we've seen an impact on student attendance. At the mid-year reports, I think you heard some information from Mr. O'Brien, you heard some information from Mrs. Olet on the impact that position has had on student discipline and student attendance. So yes, we have seen a positive use. And then from a budgetary standpoint, Mr. Rich did take over that position. From a budgetary standpoint, we're not backfilling his position. So there's a salary that we're not paying for half a school year now that's going to be in budget support to the overall budget for this year. So we're actually helping this year's budget by what we did in terms of backfilling position and not refilling the position at the elementary school level.
I think the part that's confusing is you have a position that seems to be working and you like, and now you're phasing it out and you're giving it to a whole new group of kids. You're dealing with the younger kids and that person's not gonna be working with the older kids anymore.
Because we envision right now, the supervisor of special education is a K-12 position. And we're saying instead of you focusing on K-12 now, we're gonna narrow that focus to 6-12. But and while doing so, we're gonna add in the coordinated student conduct piece into your role. So we're not eliminating what we want to accomplish with that, we're changing who's gonna be doing the work.
But what it sounded like is that person's only gonna be working and goes and.
We're gonna have an elementary school administrator that's gonna be at the elementary school level, and the current supervisor of special education who does K-12 is gonna narrow it down to 6-12.
Lose some duties.
This is two separate positions. It's not one position going and, transitioning. It's the position at the high school, middle school is reshaping. So instead of it being just, I used to call it the dean of students. It has so many names, but that one stuck in my head. Instead of it just being pure dean of students, they're blending in some special education responsibilities with that role. They're gonna rename it, they're gonna repackage it up. It has a different person in that role for next year. This year, Mr. Rich is gonna fill the role in what it's currently set at. So that's high school, middle school, set that to the side. This position is for the elementary schools, and it's basically an assistant principal, so they can breathe. It's not like we took it from the high school, middle school and dumped it at the elementary, they're
I
two
thought
separate.
one was being wiped
No,
clean.
no.
It's
Okay.
being morphed, it's being kind of, adapt, over time, this year versus, we're basically just trying to balance the budget.
Yeah, I think again, back to, not to reiterate this, but the supervisor special ed was, K through 12, right? If you lose the K through 5, there's a time allocation there. Realign that time allocation to the duties of this student behavior, whatever it is, and just focus on 6 through 12. And then now we have a face-off, a peer face-off between that person and the 2 elementary schools doing similar work. Discipline, special ed. So now we've kind of got 2 dueling people to split the district in half with those duties, the way I see it.
That's correct. So you'll find in the budget book, there's 2 pages in it that kind of explains what we're trying to accomplish with this. We can also, in addition to that, try and come up with some diagrams and more explanations to kind of map it out for you to provide to you for further explanation.
Visuals are good.
Page you were.
It's towards the beginning of the book.
And Nicole, just to go up. I tell you, I am concerned if we're taking a position,
Page
special
7.
education, even 6 through 12 is a lot of work. And we had that person going between high school and middle school doing, I'm just gonna call it dean of student work or whatever you wanna call it. I'm gonna keep it simple in my head. So we're gonna take this person who's doing hard work. We're gonna give them 2 buildings to help with discipline. I mean, wow. Whoever, do we have a person in mind for this? Is it Linda?
Supervisor, yes.
Linda, superhuman.
She is a superhuman.
She is. We're very thankful. This is something we're gonna have to be very careful with, to not overload and not underperform at any of the positions
Right.
that
And the
we're.
bottom line is, in a perfect world, we would have kept the coordinating student conduct as it was, add in the elementary school administrator and be done with it. But we recognize from a budgetary standpoint, adding another administrator in a tight fiscal climate is not fiscally responsible. We didn't think that we'd be able to get too far with that, and without cutting staff elsewhere, which we didn't want to do. So we're trying to get this new elementary school administrator in place without adding too much to the budget. So this was our way of trying to figure out from an innovative perspective, how to get the jobs done with current staff while without adding too much more to the budget.
Yeah, just real quick.
Yeah.
We funded the student conduct position last year. I'm sorry you guys are caught in the crossfire through all that. That funding, where is that going for next year's budget from the old position for the conduct?
That is going to support the new elementary school administrator plus an additional $8,000.
So that's getting split.
No. That basically is shifting from coordinating student conduct into funding the new elementary school administrator.
So the additional money that we're asking for the administrator
Yes.
in the elementary schools is additional on top of that?
Is $8,000 plus the original salary and stipend that you had.
The salary next year would have been for that position would have been $104,000. That's the salary for the teacher. There's a $10,000 stipend that goes with it. That's $114,000 for the cost of the position that exists right now. Because the new position is $122,000. The 114 goes away, the 122 comes in. The difference is the $8,000.
So with bringing in the support for the elementary schools, we're only really costing the district an extra $8,000 than what we would already have been costing already.
If we left that position in place, you would have had $114,000 cost.
Okay.
That would have happened put in the budget.
That was already in the budget. That was approved last year. We got that through. So we're looking at an additional 8 to make this all happen.
Correct.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
I think it would be helpful. I'd like to move on, but I think it would be helpful if we could have maybe a step by step of how this is working.
Yeah.
Maybe we could email it to Board of Education members and we can provide the Board of Finance with an explanation as well.
We'll continue working that field.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Want me to move it?
No. Yeah. Yeah.
So for the special education budget, similar to, what Sylvia had spoken about, is that we aren't actually asking for anything. We're very gracious that last year you actually gave to us when we weren't asking for something. And again, that's been really, really helpful. So what we've done with that position, that, the extra BCBA position, we actually split it to a part-time person. So we fund it as a part-time BCBA who's here 3 days in the district. And the other part of that salary, we hired as a behavior technician who implements those plans with the BCBA. So they're in the classroom implementing the plans, showing the paraprofessionals how to enter and do those plans with Fidelity. They're going in, doing Fidelity checks, making sure that the plan is being completed as it's supposed to. And then, you know, providing additional support through the BCBA. So she kind of says, you know, I was in the classroom, I noticed this, and then the BCBA is providing that direct supervision to the paraprofessionals or BTs in the classroom. So, we do appreciate you asking, or providing that additional support. It's been really beneficial. The one thing, obviously, you know, we always are funding our district transportation and tuition. So that is just something that's kind of a fixed amount in our budget. And then, you know, supporting the specialized programs. So those actually, before I started, they were put into place. We had very small classrooms with very small amount of students, but planning that at that time was really beneficial because right now these classrooms are filling up. So you'll see an increase in paraprofessionals, and that's really to support those specialized classrooms that have a good number of students in both of the classrooms at the elementary and the middle school. And they service, right now, it's elementary to middle school. I think in next year, or maybe the year after, considering building onto the high school at that point, but we're not there just yet. So those extra paraprofessionals are supporting the specialized classrooms. And again, that's a cost savings because these are students that may be outplaced in other districts, but we are able to support them through what we're doing here. We had Cooperative Educational Services, CES, come in with 2 of their trained professionals. They are the only ones in the Northeast that are trained in developmental therapy, and they've trained both the teachers in those classrooms. So they're utilizing pretty much what they'd be utilizing in and out placement within our district schools, and that's been really, really beneficial. Other than that, we won't talk about it any longer, but I would be in support of that position to help with Amy and Rachel. Again, we're looking at the best way to structure it. But I think providing them that additional support, again, I would be supporting that special ed piece of it. But giving them, you know, someone that can give them that time to do that really important instructional rounds with the classrooms versus just being tied up in PPT. As you can see, we have an increase of students. We're over 300 at this point. We do have a lot of students moving in that have IEPs, and we are referring new students within the district too. So just something to keep in mind. Any questions? Yes.
Could you explain the increase in transportation out of district, like 37%, so $270,000 increase?
So I think, I mean, Howard and we contract those services. All Star doesn't have transportation to contract that. We do some of our internal runs with our new van. That's been really, really helpful. That actually decreased it by quite a bit. We had one run previous that was costing us $22,000 a month roughly. So we were able to get the van and kind of bring that cost down. Unfortunately, it's contracted through these different companies to make those runs. So it depends on the distance of where they're coming from and how much they're charging for the daily rate. It's not necessarily anything we can regulate. We do kind of go back and forth to kind of negotiate, but it's just based on where the students are going, the length of the day, the time of the day, and what each of the subcontracted companies are charging. And then, of course, the increased fuel costs.
Thank you.
Could you say how many special ed students are in 6 through 12? Because there's 302 in the district. So how many would be in the 6 through 12?
About 120 roughly. I'm just going by the numbers that are on my board currently in my office, so.
So
There's roughly 59 students in the middle school and 74 students currently at the high school. That's just within our district, being serviced daily. We, obviously, there's students in outplacements and things like that, but in our building, we have 59 middle school special education students and 74 at the high school.
I just think that's a lot of students for, the supervisor of special education. To take on all of those students as well as being the behavior person as well. Those seem to be two separate positions to me.
Yeah, and currently our supervisor of special education is overseeing the whole district. So she's, you know, K-12 or pre-K-12 right now.
Right, but
Actually
there-
pre-K to 12.
Right, but there are certainly a lot of behavioral issues as well. And, you know, I just think that that's an awful lot for one person. The supervisor of special ed.
So are we hearing support for a second, but reinstate that position as it was?
No, I'm just saying that is, I don't know. You know, I don't know how, you know, how else you can do it, but
We also have to remember too, each of the buildings at the middle school and high school have an assistant principal too. So there are people that are running PPTs, not just the supervisor of special education. So there are 4 administrators between the middle school, high school, and the supervisor. As of right now, though, that supervisor is covering pre-K to 12. So there are additional principals, and I will say between the 2 elementary schools, they have the same amount of students roughly in special education. So if we're sharing one person, they're covering the same amount of students as well.
but wouldn't there be more behavioral issues in the 6th through 12?
Not necessarily. I think behaviors look a lot different at 6 to 12. So 6 to 12, I think we're dealing, you know, there's many behaviors, and what we're seeing at, you know, the reason we have an additional BCBA is we're seeing a lot of physical behaviors from our younger students. So we have that additional support, and that BCBA actually also supports K to 12 too. So I think it looks different in terms of what those behaviors are. 6-12, sometimes it's more of the avoidance. There are some, I would say we have less physical behaviors at that age. But it is definitely, I wouldn't say there's more or less behaviors in the middle school than the elementary school.
So currently 302, but so it increases every year. So is this, if we're doing a budget, how many are you expecting for next year?
So it increased about, it kind of fluctuates, right? Students graduate and then students exit special education. So we did hit over 300 at the end of last year. I think we were at 310 and then we're now at 302. So, I mean, give or take, I think last year we increased by about 15 to 20 overall after all those fluctuations. So I could see it probably being similar to 15 to 20 students.
Just out of curiosity, not that I think you'll have an answer for this today, but I saw last night on the news that the state now has a select committee on sped costs. And I know that this is a big driver of the risks in our budget, because we don't know what's gonna happen. We know the education cost share grants aren't being fully funded. Do you have any faith that that's gonna go anywhere and relieve this from the municipalities in any way? Or is it just something to make it look like they're gonna help us and then it might not?
I would like to think that they are. It's been something, there was a task force enacted, I think it was 2 years ago, and they finally just presented, you know, that was the major driver for that. So there is a lot of people that are a part of this and taking a look at it. So I am very hopeful that we can, you know, even if it's just increasing our cost share.
Right.
As you know, it's been cut the last couple of years. So if we could even just increase back to where we were, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, they were talking about how they're gonna be doing the listening tour and that these are gonna be legislators leaving the Capitol to go learn about this. I hope we have an opportunity to engage with them and make them see how serious this is to us and other families.
They've just funded 70%, which is legislatively supposed to fund that, as opposed to this year where they funded at 62%.
Right.
So, I mean.
Yeah, they mentioned how
Fund
obviously
what you're
right,
supposed to fund.
the grants haven't even gone up to match inflation, let alone the fact that they're.
Correct, yeah, now they're going below the legally supposed to fund it.
I can definitely share out information if they're going to be in our area. I will definitely be advocating for that.
I was just curious if there was any more that you knew other than that, but I hope that turns into something to help
It's
out.
something definitely to watch. I know it's going to be a bill, so definitely following it and seeing where it's headed. But it is a big push. It's been a lot of talks for the last year, and as Howard said, if we could even just be funded at the 70%, that would help a lot.
Just If there's any questions regarding, because you'll see numbers that increase, I just want to talk about the paras going here, right? So what ended up happening this year is, so we had to bring back paras from the grants, because the grants, again, they're not funding them as we anticipate. So there's $216,000 that's coming back onto the operating budget that was being funded by grants, because the money just isn't there, and we have to keep them because, as Dr. Polanowski suggested, the students need the paras. So that's part of the large increase that you're seeing in the paras. And also, as Dr. Polanowski alluded to, since this time last year, we had 39 paras, now we have 44 paras. So when the budget was approved last year, there was 39, that's what was in the budget. But during the year, we had to add more because of the need. So that's another reason why the budget looks much larger, because they're not in that budget from last year. So you're seeing it's $143,000 of those type of that time. So to combine, it was like $350,000 with a para salary that has been added to this budget that didn't exist there last year. So that's why you're seeing such a large increase in those lines specifically. I just want to draw that to your attention.
I know they're tied to state IEPs and things, right?
Correct. Right. You have to have. Yeah.
And that's the risk that we know when we build a budget, that we're building based on the anticipated special education students that we have in front of us today. But if students move in either with an IEP already that requires that paraprofessional, or it's a brand new PPT with a new IEP, it's possible that wasn't even on the horizon, because now that student all of a sudden needs that support that didn't need before. And in those cases, these needs were new, that were not known when we built the budget. That's the risk that we had.
And there is zero contingency for that. Students, like in the past, has come into district with a full out placement that we have to abide by legally. So in the past, I think years ago, sometimes we would have a little contingency. This year, we have zero contingency for that.
Yeah, literally. Yeah. So in the line, you'll see it on page, when we get into the details. Page 84. It's the tuition, the district's line. I highlighted it in red just because I just thought it was important to note that there are, in that tuition line, that's for an outplacement. An outplacement basically costs about $150,000. So we have no contingencies in there. There are literally none. So if a student comes in and we have to outplace them, which again, trying not to, but if it has to happen, that's $150,000 budget deficit that all of a sudden we just unaccounted for. So I just want to make you all aware of that as well.
And same thing with paraprofessionals. There are IEPs that come in that are already have assigned people to them and do.
Right. Yeah, there's no buffer there. There's no extra salaries. It's just what we have, what we need. That's what's budgeted for now. If someone comes in that needs one, it's the budget's long.
And just to note, I think in order for us to be IDEA compliant and continue to receive federal funds, we do have to spend more each year than the previous year. So just, make sure, just so we can maintain the funding that we get.
The reduction in grants for the paras, is that because the state is doing removing the grants, or is there a possibility these grants could come back?
So the way the state, my understanding is the way the state calculates it, right? Part of the issue of why ours is Oxford is being reduced is because you're becoming a more affluent community. As you move up, you were 58th last year, and you were 58th out of, I don't know the total number, you're 50 something, 150 something, you were 58th. This year, 53rd. Okay, you're becoming a more affluent community. As you become a more affluent community, you get less and less allocated to you because it's more and more to the less affluent communities. So that's a big part of it. Also, the funding for those grants is being reduced. The IDEA grant is a federal grant, right? So I don't know if Connecticut got less. I know Connecticut just didn't fund it. It wasn't funded as much. So then again, I don't know if they're cutting back or it's the Fed cutting back. And so I just know a big part of it though is your affluence. As you become more affluent, the less you're going to get. Matter of fact, if you just this year for the excess cost grant, you literally were the last one with 62%. If you had moved up one more, you would have been at 60% getting excess cost back of what was coming back. And that's how close you are to being in the top tier of the states. The state considers top tier affluent communities.
We used to be 70
years ago. 70s, yeah. So you've been consistently moving up.
continually
moving up. Yeah. Matter of fact, I did an analysis one, I think it was last year, where I was showing the comparison. Right now, you're on DERG,
which is your DERG C. And that calculation was done in 2006 and hasn't been updated since. Well, there's a group in the state of Connecticut, Connecticut Financiers Group or something like that. They actually redid the formula using the exact same formula from 2006. And they did it in 2023. You're now in DERG B, and you're in with the New Canaans. You're in with the much higher level schools that I get it. They have a lot more money down that end of the state, but that's the group you're being put into now, and you're being considered part of it. So just be aware of that when it comes to funding, when you're getting funding from the state, how it's going to impact your operating budget, because now there's less grant money to be able to utilize.
Okay, curriculum instruction.
So Eric Williams, Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment. So at page 35, I'm also going to refer to, so page 89 is the kind of line item piece, specifically the operations. So similar to some other cost centers, no major increases. Actually, the overall budget does go down in my cost center. There's three of those lines under operations are the major drivers of my budget. Number one being curriculum writing. Last year about this time, we did create a new district-wide curriculum template. So for about a year now, we're working on trying to get as much new curriculum written, especially some of the New English programs we brought on K-12, as well as revise curriculum that has not been written in a while. So this is just a continuation. In this past year, we've done, I think 7 major content curriculum with high school English, middle school English, middle school math. This year, we're working on world languages. We've done high school health class, working on middle school library, middle school music, as well as some new elective courses that just got approved by the board. So this is going to be something we're doing every year until we get to the point where we have everything either written or revised. So that's the curriculum writing line item there. The other major piece of my job is kind of overseeing the professional development that occurs in the district. If you remember last year, during the budget process, we took all of the schools, PD line items, the majority of them, as well as special education, and put them into mine. So there's a lot of those pieces in that line item for professional development. And again, that's going to be kind of a ongoing cost that you're going to see every year. This year, I created a form so any teacher can reach out and request professional development that should be somewhat aligned to obviously their content area or to their particular teacher evaluation goals. So we've had some big ticket items. We sent a lot of teachers to something called Building Thinking Classroom, which is related to math and student engagement in math. We've sent people play-based learning, which is a state mandate at the K-3 level. We've had a lot of PD around that, as well as AI. But again, any teacher can request. And as of now, I've been able to send probably about 95% of all requests have been approved for professional development. This also includes being able to pay outside vendors to come in and provide professional development as well. So we've had at the board meeting, Matt Mervis, who did the AI presentation. I have a meeting with him tomorrow. He's probably going to be coming back during our full day PD this year to work with 6-12 teachers on AI and assignments and making them durable. So that's the type of work and what comes out of the professional development line. We were able to do a slight decrease this year, and most of that is because of the investment we made in the K-5 literacy coach. So she is taking on a lot of professional development in those grade levels. And we did not have to use some outside vendors that we've used previously for those grade levels for that specific area. The other major budget driver is just supplies. Well, each school has obviously their line item for supplies. Any new courses or revisions, I do put money aside for any materials that may be needed for them. So we do have a couple new elective courses that got approved for next year's program of studies at the high school. So there is some money set aside for that piece. I do also purchase, as we get data back throughout the year, whether it's math, ELA, really any assessment data as we're reviewing it. There just comes meetings and times where it's like, we really need like these manipulatives to help in math, or, based on this data, we can really start to implement this. So there is part of that budget I put aside to be able to get things immediately after we finish that data analysis piece from the assessments we do. And then, I do set some aside to try to just bring in student engagement into the classroom. So for example, at the end of last year, we did purchase a couple drones for a middle school class to see if there's interest with the students, to see if it's something we can build on later. So that's really kind of what lives in the instructional supply piece. And that's probably about 95% of the budget. And then the rest is the professional supplies, resources I purchase or purchase for others to help create PD. So it's not only vendors who provide the professional development. I provide some, obviously the principals provide them. Megan provides them as well. So it's resources for those people in the district who are providing professional development for the staff. So that is one of the big pieces of the curriculum budget.
So Eric, what do you think is the most impactful thing we could do to move the needle as far as achievement, teaching and learning? Is there something in the budget that you didn't ask for, but would really make a difference?
I don't think there's one thing. I think what we gotta be, careful of is the reason there's no big, huge ask here is we've had a bunch over the past, I've only been here a year and a half, and then previous to me, we've made huge purchases into HMH, into reading, the purchase into the math programs we've got. And, when I work with the K-5 literacy coach or anyone, my personal philosophy and the way we do things here is I've never seen a program that you can take by and say, hey, this works great, go use it. Day-to-day teachers just go to page 1 and use it, turn to page 2. It takes a ton of work, time, understanding by the teachers, the meeting time that the principals were talking about, to go ahead and make that into a program that's going to work for Oxford Public Schools. So, once we get some of the stuff that we've brought on the past couple of years in the right place, like, yes, there may be some as we move forward. Things may change in the future. I know, we will have some subscriptions up, some major budget item subscriptions like math in the next couple of years. 2 years down the road, we'll be talking about end of the 5-year cycle for HMH and the kind of money it's going to talk to resubscribe for that. So, in regards to, I'd love to bring in a whole bunch of technology and programs and such, but it's a small district. Every time you bring something in, you got to say, is something leaving because of that? Do we have the staff to do this? So we have a lot of irons in the fire, right? That's the same. We have a lot of irons in the fire right now. And I think, we have to perfect what we're doing now. We have the people in place in order to do that. And we are looking at more programming, a lot of conversations happening at like the high school, and we're at kind of the beginning stages of that. So yes, things may come, but I'm comfortable with what we have this upcoming year. But we're always talking about how can we innovate and what can we add and bring, and those conversations are happening now, but we'll see what those bring.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
We're going to contribute about this in IT. Jim, you wanna go?
Sure.
Well, my name is Jim Loxinger. I'm the Director of Technology Coordinator of IT. My major budget drivers is on page 37. Mine really fall into 2 buckets, software and hardware. And as you heard Eric talk about software, I am the key. Sorry. I am the keeper of all online software. It just lives in my budget. It's easiest for me to renew them all because I'm in charge of IT. So most of them don't really pertain to actually IT. And if you look at some of these like Amplified, Dibbles, IXL, those are our curriculum based, not IT based, but they live online. So it's just easiest for me to do them. The reason that one went up as much as it did, because those are being paid by a federal grant called ESSER. ESSER is no longer, so now they're back into our budget. So that's the majority of them. You will see that there are 2 softwares in there that we are asking for new this year, an EDR software for our desktops. It's an advanced detection and response software, which we currently don't have, which actually might lower our insurance as well. We just have a semi-basic, it's not a full EDR solution. So there's only 2 of us in the IT department that manage every single device on the network and all the network devices as well. This actually has people monitoring our logs 24/7 and gives us responses to when they notice something on one of our devices. So it's pretty valuable software. We're trialing one right now that we like, that actually has 24/7 notifications. So and then a school dismissal software, which we plan to implement in GOES and Quaker. If you ever been down Great Oak Road at about 3 o'clock, you know those lines and the weaving in and out of traffic. We hope that this software actually alleviates some of that. It's like a QR based code where the parent drives up, scans the QR code, sends a signal inside, says Johnny's ready to be picked up. Johnny leaves, and it alleviates them standing outside as well. So hopefully that will help as well. And that's a very small ticket item. The second major driver for us is hardware. We started purchasing grades 3 and 8 Chromebooks last year. And we would like to continue that going forward. So in 3 and 8, they got a brand new Chromebook. They're going to move forward to 4 and 9. And 3 and 8 will get brand new ones next year, and hopefully continue that cycle. And a 5-year cycle is a pretty good lifespan for a Chromebook to keep them the life of it. We also purchased insurance for them as well, which cost the district approximately $30 a device. We do typically more than the devices that are one per student, so that we have some extras that can go on out, so they don't end up broken. We repair most of those on site, but we have the opportunity to also send them in to be repaired as well. Some of the ones that require a little more intricate cabling, we just send out. If it's a screen or keyboard, we fix it in-house. We can also leverage, which we haven't had time to do so, students to fix those as well. They run a whole program. The insurance company runs a program to actually run a class. They'll come in and teach the kids how to change them out for us too. We just haven't had time to get around to that. So, and then that would also include a desktop computers for Great Oak. They're the last one on. They're approximately 10 years old. The computers here in this building cannot run Windows 11. So Windows 10 is dead in 26, I believe, in October. So they won't send us security updates anymore. So that's kind of important. So that's about it.
Sure. Copier lease, 163,000.
Yeah.
That's the actual cost to lease one copier?
Oh, no. 10 copiers and prints as well. So all our printers as well. So that covers maintenance on all the printers, as well as a separate, specific number of prints, if you will, out of those copies.
And that's more cost effective than purchasing new copiers?
It is, because then we're not responsible for maintenance. That includes maintenance of all those machines. If you ever had a toner blow up on you, you know, what kind of mess that is. And drums and all those things, the rollers, and those are, you know, we call up Xerox, they're here the next day. And that actually is up now, and I think we actually got a small reduction in that
I
too.
think we're gonna get a small, we're negotiating right now. We're gonna call tomorrow, Jim and I are
Yeah.
gonna call tomorrow morning. So we're negotiating.
It's not a huge reduction, but it's not, it's $300 a month.
It should be less than that, yes. It should end up being.
And it will include Staples too, which ours did not prior.
Yeah.
So secretaries are very happy.
Believe it or not, it's like $3,000 a year.
Yeah, believe it or not.
So that's Stacy, just like Stacy. So
It's crazy, yeah.
True story.
And most districts do lease in this capacity.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was just curious, like
Yeah.
how many copiers?
I think maintenance alone, you'd be, you know, for only 2 of us to maintain the 10 copiers would be very difficult.
Literally.
Very, very difficult.
That yearly charge.
Yeah, it's typically a 5-year lease. And they're gonna come and take those 10 out and. We were talking.
Question on the capital improvements,
Yes.
500 and change.
Yep.
What are we looking at? I mean, it's an
So-
access point, is it the network switches?
That's a 1-to-1 swap out with what we have currently. So our firewalls are pretty much end of life at end of 2026 as well. Switch it, as soon as that stops, we can't update any of the switches either for any of the security updates. APs would gain us more visibility, because the radios are better. The actual number is not what is in the budget because we will be applying for E-rate as well, which is a federal funded grant program, but we only qualify for 40%, so it's just under a mil. I think it was 950, yeah, somewhere right around there. But that would give us full transparency. Every single piece would be taken down and put right back up.
So we're gonna stick with Fortinet?
I think so, yeah.
For the access points, are we going to the 7s? Are we going with 6E?
Off the top of my head, I believe they're 7s, but I'm not positive. It doesn't do us. It's about the same price to go from 6 to 7, but I don't quote me on that because I looked at it real fast.
I think the price went up for Fortinet for that, but at
Yeah.
a certain point, it becomes negligible.
Right,
Because you get, a deeper range.
right.
I don't know.
I'm just waiting to the next one. Trying to be polite.
Now, I know that for some of the work we've done in security, are there any concerns where our infrastructure in, for example, Quaker? Do we need, is it a one-to-one swap or do we need further investment in Quaker for what we are looking to do /
I don't think so, no. I mean, it's the same thing as here. Essentially, I mean, it's still Fortinet switches everything's almost exactly the same. They might not have a main switch there, they just have regular switches. But it's pretty much the same.
So it's a full lift and shift, or is there something we need to look at engineering wise that's changed? We should be thinking forward on.
Well, we've been talking to Fortinet in that capacity.
I'm not an IT guy, but.
Yeah, we've been talking to Fortinet in that capacity. Not, obviously they're trying to sell us their stuff, but if you talk to anybody, they're gonna do the exact same thing. So we have them in-house now and we have contracts with them because we pay for that stuff. And they're more than willing, they're actually coming out on site Friday, I believe.
Great.
To maybe not do so much of a heat map, because you might be able to reduce the number. But our coverage is real good right now, it's only gonna get better.
Yeah.
But we add more devices onto the network because, it's inevitable. But that's if we don't do this in some manner, the security is gonna be a problem. Because without firmware updates, without OS updates, it's not a good scenario.
And all of our security goes to the technology devices.
Between badges, all the cameras are all out there. So
And what's up there now? What standard is up there now?
I don't, off the top of my head, I don't know.
Okay.
But I believe it's 5, not maybe 4 though,
Wow.
because these were purchased, I think, as part of the middle school. Yeah, but the thing is, not a lot of our devices are gonna be 6 or 7 either, educationally wise, it's not real. It's not cost effective, it's not cost effective, right? To put those, wireless. In those devices.
Future proof it though.
Yes, correct, going forward, right. Right, but as we know. 2 years later down the road, they blast out 9 and we're behind the 8 ball anyways, but that's irrelevant. But yeah, trying to get the best we can, most bang for our buck is what we're trying to do.
We're good?
Facilities. I'm gonna bring Mike, our chief operations officer, and Ryan.
I'm just gonna go over it.
Okay. Board of Finance, I know you've met before, Ryan is our director of security hired this past summer.
Hello, everybody. Michael D'Agostino, the Chief Operating Officer. Facility falls underneath my purview. So first of all, thank you very much for taking the time with us tonight. One of the things that I wanted to discuss about facilities, that I'm very comfortable and confident in saying that facilities are in a better place than they were when we met last year at this time. There's been an awful lot of work done, and I believe that the learning environment is a better learning environment than it has been. Our budget for facilities is, I would classify it as an aggressive budget. It's a reduction of 2.8%.
from last year. We're continuing with the remaining or current staff levels. We're not looking for any change there. Very fortunate to have a very competent and hardworking staff across the whole district. Part of the reason, I'm sorry, page 38, 39 in your book there. Part of the reason why I feel comfortable with the budget at the level that we're proposing is that we have a new HVAC system in this building. It's working very well. And I anticipate that we'll have lower costs in terms of any kind of repairs because everything will be covered under warranty. And we've also been doing a large number of repairs based on either deferred maintenance or preventative maintenance. And I'm leveraging or hoping that we'll have some future cost reduction due to that. So that's sort of what my train of thought when I was building the budget, which you'll find on page 90, if you'd like to take a look at the line items.
Why is there a reduction of 127,000 for ground maintenance? Like, what's the reduction that you're saying only budgeting for snow plowing? What else were you doing?
So, no, go ahead.
So last year in the budget was a mistake. I budgeted for ground maintenance, not realizing that that's gonna be by the Parks and Recreation. It's not charged backwards. I budgeted as if the town was gonna charge back and they don't. That's the full reduction then.
I think there was a concern that they would charge us. There was that conversation over multiple years of who's picking up the tab on that. So I don't think it was a mistake as much as it was not fully decided. It was.
And we had been told that we were gonna be putting it in the budget.
It was communicated that we would be
Yes.
picking it up.
Yeah, so we budgeted for
We
it.
budgeted for it.
Right.
We had a budget.
We're talking like field maintenance?
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay.
So as gracious as Howard is being, it wasn't a mistake by Howard. We thought we were going to be getting that responsibility and we're not.
So we're assuming that it's not gonna come this year either. It's gonna come next year, so.
Well, we've taken it out of the
Make it burned on
budget.
that one, so.
Every time Parker Rec gets stuck with the maintenance, they always wanna push it back. And, you know, it's who gets it. Now they're stuck with it.
We're,
They have to make it.
you know, we're a very big component of Park and Rec. I'm very happy with dealing with Kira Nesteriak. She's a great person. And our buildings are utilized heavily by Park and Rec. So our buildings very rarely get a break. There's not a lot of time that our buildings get to rest, but I'm very happy to let her take care of the fields.
Is the middle school baseball field being utilized?
Yes, it is. They did have some home games this year. There's still some concerns about the drainage. We've taken some steps to repair it or to augment it actually, and we're hopeful that it's gonna work for us. Do we want to talk about the capital improvements?
You wanna do the capital improvement now or come back after all the operating stuff is done?
You're here.
I did.
And then we'll speak for security. Is that okay?
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you. So if we go to page 94 and 95 for the 5-year capital plan. So you'll notice there are four items that we've put on this for this year. We discussed the network upgrade with the Director of IT, Jim Lossinger. The other three are the first grade playground, the track repair at the middle school, and a generator for this building. This building requires 2 different generators because there's 2 different power sources coming in at 2 different levels. So there's no way to have one generator for the 2 different levels of power. They're very different. I think it's 208 or I'm sorry, it might be 408 and 220 or 220 and 408. So the bottom line is it requires 2 generators and they're both going to be very large. So each generator is going to be about $250,000. And again, the heating system now is all electric. So if we lost power here, we wouldn't have any heating, we wouldn't have any air conditioning, we also would not have any internet for this whole street, right? I
Right,
believe.
yeah,
That's correct.
and the phones all go through the internet.
Right, and the phones are over the internet as well. So that's a major concern. The first grade playground at Quaker Farms has been a concern for a long time. Rachel and I have spoken about that. We've done repairs and upgrades to the other two playgrounds, and it's time for the first grade playground to get an overhaul. The some of the apparatus that are there are not compliant right now, so they really should be replaced. There was a question earlier about the middle school track repair, Nicole, and I walked the track with a contractor, with a contractor. Looks like in the past, there was an awful lot of repair work that was done and some drainage that was added. And the drainage went from the inner field to outside of the track, so the track got cut. And it looked like there was drainage that was laid through there. All of those repairs have receded or separated from the original track. So that $20,000 is to go back and repair them again,
So
correct?
it's like filling potholes.
It's more than that. It's actually cutting out the areas of the track that have failed and replacing it with the new track and lining it. So the track would then, it's asphalt, and so the track would then be the same level. We wouldn't have as many concerns about a trip and fall or a twisted ankle or something along those. It's to take what's failed and repair it or replace it. It's not meant as a number to rip up the whole thing and start all over again. That would be hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Are you comfortable with the $20,000?
I am with that contractor. Another contractor might have a different idea. I would have to take a look at it.
And are you comfortable that you're gonna get a good result for that $20,000?
Again, that contractor has done some work for us. I'm very comfortable with his work. And I think he has a lot of pride in the work that he does.
I also have a question about the track, how long would that extend the life before we would be looking at another repair?
I don't know, because I don't know I don't know what the future holds, but if you take care of all of the areas that need repair now, it should last, I would say, at least another 5 to 10 years. Well, unless there's some other failure underneath the track, and the substrate underneath the track.
Do you know approximately when the last time was that there were significant repairs on it?
No, I'm sorry, I don't.
Mike, are you the facilities man for all the schools?
Yes, sir.
You are.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we've done a lot of work in all
Yes, we have, and
the, I can tell you that
I appreciate your support.
tomorrow night, okay, I think that the Quaker Farm School HVAC will be going ahead.
Oh,
We
terrific.
get that.
That's
Okay,
fantastic.
2 schools with the HVAC. Of course, we got the new school. We did a lot of work on the high school. We did the pool. We did what do we call the
The pool pack.
the pool pack.
Yep.
Okay, that's in there. In Great Oak, we just finished the roof, and now we're putting in the HVAC for the gym and the lunchroom.
That's correct.
So that's a lot of work, and what we have on the line right now is, we have about, let's say $11 million. And we are getting grants, which I wish the state would hurry up and start releasing some checks. That we're down to cost the town about a net, just on the school projects, about $5 million.
That sounds about right.
This wasn't a great time,
No,
believe me, but it is what it is.
well, I certainly appreciate all of the work that you've done, the conversations that we've had, and I appreciate the town's support in doing all this, but you have 4 buildings and it's about 500,000 square feet that take a lot of care.
But I think the important thing is, eventually after next year, all the children will be not freezing to death for school.
Well, that's the
Not
goal.
wet, not hot.
Right.
And breathing fresh air.
I agree with you, and that's the
That's a
reason why,
great goal.
I think that's a great goal, and that's the reason for my opening statement, that I feel confident from the time that we met last year at this meeting to this year, that the children have a better learning environment than they did previously.
Sure do.
So, and that's my goal. And I think that's everyone's goal here. Any other questions for me?
One question for Howard. The network upgrade of 540, is that worked into your operating budget, or is that what you're calling up pure capital?
Pure capital.
If there's no other questions, I'd like to introduce.
Let's stay with the capital.
Oh, I'm
for
sorry.
a moment. So
Okay,
in order to comply with the town statutes, we're supposed to provide the town our capital improvement plan by February first, just my understanding, that's what we've done in the past. So we'd be asking the board to vote on the capital improvement plan tonight. If there's any changes that you want to see me made, we certainly can make those changes, reflect in the document, and send that on to the board of finance as well.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the capital improvement projects as presented.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Brett, you were saying something. This is a board vote. Are we voting on? I'll ask you.
We're just voting to move it forward for this year.
I just had a question where we came up with the priority list and the urgency.
that was my evaluation of where we were and how long we could sort of go out with some things. There are some things that I may or may not be able to move. The one that jumps off the page for me is Quaker Farms paving lot. Rachel and I have had numerous conversations about that. Whether or not it can last to get to 2028, I'm not entirely sure. I don't have a crystal ball, but you know, that might be an issue. But in terms of the high school roof repair, that's just because by then the roof will be over 20 years old. And so I'm assuming that we're gonna need some repairs, so I'm putting a dollar amount there.
So I'm just noticing from the subcommittee meetings that there's less stuff here than there was before. Is that a lot of that in the budget, in different cost centers?
I believe.
For example, like the athletic stuff.
I believe some of it is.
Some of the athletic stuff would be capital improvement plans.
Right, okay, let me just, that's, want to make sure. Brett, would you like to say something? You're good? Yeah, okay. All right, any more discussion? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions, motion passes.
Thank you. One of the major investments that our board made and the Board of Finance made, in fact, the town made, was to invest in a new position for the Director of Security for the district. And in just a few months, Brian Hager, who is our Director of Security, has significantly enhanced what we do within the schools in terms of the operating procedures, the audits of the schools, changes in protocols. So we are safer today than we were 5 months ago. And the budget you see today reflects his vision of how we can continue to enhance that security. Right.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Brian Viger. I'm Director of Security. First and foremost, I want to thank the town of Oxford as well as the Oxford Public Schools for their commitment in school security. I can say this wholeheartedly, having been involved in school security since 2012. Oxford is arguably one of the best in the state when it comes to school security. And it's reflected in the current proposed budget for 25-26 at $175,349. Factually, that is the lowest budget amongst the districts inside the district in terms of the divisions. And arguably, my unit would have the most impact in the event of an emergency, God forbid.
Brian, what page are you?
I'm sorry, I'm working off page 46, but more importantly for you guys in terms of the facts and the numbers is going to be page 88. I'm also going to apologize in advance for some of the questions you guys may have. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to answer due to the sensitivity of some of those answers. In terms of the finance committee, you should know that I do work collaboratively with the board in terms of the subcommittee with regards to security. We go into an executive session and all of those facts are given out to them. I would also like to thank IT, Jim and his unit, as well as Mike and the facilities. I have the honor of working collaboratively with them. It's my belief as a result of working collaboratively with IT and facilities, the budget remains what it is in terms of being the lowest in the district. I have the ability to kind of pawn off some of the security measures over to IT as well as being absorbed to the facilities. I'm going to specifically stick to some of the ones that fall directly into security. So there's a tactical phrase we like to use. It's called emergency consistency. And essentially that is standardizing and applying policies, procedures, and practices across the district in terms of emergency preparedness so that in the event of an emergency, we're standardized across all 4 buildings, as well as all the structures that oversee the district, so that we can have a routine, consistent, and effective response for staff as well as the students. So as the superintendent mentioned, my position is brand new to the district. I got boots on ground on August 5th. A week into my deployment, I was hit with a storm. We were hit with a storm as well as the flooding. After that, I spent the big bulk of my time auditing all of our security systems, from badges to keys to protocols, emergency notification systems. And needless to say, some of the deficiencies and discrepancies were noted and communicated both to the superintendent as well as the Board of Ed. Specifically under the security division, I'd like to focus on a couple areas. As you can see on page 88, line item number 4, there's a 600% increase in terms of miscellaneous expenses. That is to cover what we call emergency curtains or classroom door and window pulls. In the event of a lockdown, as you can see here, they have paper over at GOES. Again, standardizing it so that what we do over at Quaker is replicated over at the high school. That is one of the biggest increases. Right now it's proposed at $3,000. I am working with a local vendor that can only supply to nonprofit agencies. That is why that price is so low. The next largest item would be 125%. An increase to the budget of $5,000, and that is so that we can implement new radios. Fortunately, that is one of our largest pitfalls. The newest radios were delivered back in 2014. So if you go on that technology, we're basically looking at 11 years. And those are for our newest ones. I am working collaboratively with the fire department in terms of making sure what radios that we are proposing will work seamlessly with them in terms of emergency management, as well as the PD. So those are the biggest increases in terms of that budget.
You will see, if you noticed in the capital budget, probably there's $100,000 for radios as well. So just so you're aware of what's going on there, Brian is also working with trying to get a grant that replaces all the radios, and that would be the $100,000. In order for us to file for grants, we have to put it into the capital budget. Doesn't necessarily mean that it has to happen, but it has to be in the capital budget somewhere so that the grant will be accepted. So that's why that is in there. This $5,000 is replacement to replace. It's not all of them, it's just some for the old. So just want to make sure you're clear on that. And also, one of the larger increases is it's 5.4 thousand in the salary line. Currently, we require that the ASOs remain on site during their lunch hour, but they're not paid for it. All their surrounding towns, and my understanding is all surrounding towns do actually pay them to remain on site. So we are going to pay them a half hour every day for their lunch hour. That would cost $5,400 for the two ASOs over the balance of the year. That's why that's large increase in the salary. Their salary increases are 2.5%. So there's no, that's what the big piece is, that we have to pay the extra half hour. If that wasn't in there, the actual increase in security would only increase 4%.
Thank you. So rounding out, as we get into the central officer district, I would like to publicly thank Howard for his leadership in the budget process. The budget book you see here tonight has been an evolution over the last 5 years that I've been here, and I believe it's the most transparent and straightforward budget book that we've done, and each year it's gotten better. And Howard, thank you for all the time and effort you put into it.
Thank you. We'll start with central office, which is initially the slide page is on 42. The detail is on 87. So what we're looking at here is that the largest increases in this budget. So the salary lines you're seeing there for superintendent, the chief operating officer, and myself, we have 2.5% increases. Again, those are the two salary lines, but you're seeing a large increase, 75% in the stipend line. What the $3,000 is because in the teacher's contract, any teacher who gets their doctorate gets paid $3,000 a year. We just had one this year. He just got his doctorate. As of like, I bet you lumped the papers in today to tell me he got his doctorate. So I had to put $3,000 into the budget. So that's the large increase there. Also, everything else is pretty much remains flat except for the $5,000 to the superintendent events line. Again, we added that line last year. I'm just adjusting it to what's occurring as we get more historical data. I'm adjusting it to the actual. That's why it's such a large increase. Any questions on central office?
Was that the doctorate, just out of curiosity?
Steve Sparks. Yeah.
It's a great accomplishment.
Yes, it is. Congratulations. Steve.
Okay, so we'll move on to the district-wide. A little bit larger increase here. Primary, again, so the primary drivers here is, and again, I've done an analysis, it's further back in the book.
What page are you on?
I'm sorry, page 83 is the line item. Page 44 is the slide. And page 45 is also the major budget. So I'm gonna start with page 45, just because it's a little easier to read than on the line item. So substitute paraprofessionals, this is twice now. Last year I reduced it, because what I'm looking at is I'm looking at the historical usage. Last year, I believe it was it was $82,000. Then we actually spent the prior year $26,000. So there's no need to have $82,000 in that line item. So I'm bringing it down for historical usage. So that's why you're seeing such a large decrease in that line. The next line, degree changes, unsettled contracts. Just so you're aware, the contract, each of the individual line items in here for paraprofessionals, for custodians, and for nurses does not have a salary increase for them for next year because their contracts, we are currently going to go into negotiations this year and have not been settled. So we don't know what the raises would be. So there is a raise put into the budget, but it's in this line item, just because we don't want to give up negotiating by putting an X% raise in a line item, so they'll know exactly what we budgeted for. So for all the associations, we put all the raises in here. That's why it's such a large increase. Part-time bus drivers, the $24,000 is a significant increase. But again, as Dr. Poganowski spoke before, we were actually spending $23,000 a month when we were using an outside service. So having two part-time drivers at this $24,000 increase, it's actually $34,000 overall for the cost. It's a significant actual savings compared to what it would be if we outsourced this to a different, like an all-star. Employee medical, they always the fun one. Brown and Brown, we have a cap of 11%. It can't go no higher than 11% this year. They told me to budget at that, but I'm hoping is not a plan. I understand that, but at the end of the day, I'm confident that it's going to be less than 11%, and that's why I put 8% in here. I actually think it's actually going to be a little less than that, and I'll have a final number probably in the next few weeks, hopefully, or a better number, I should say, that I can update this with.
What's the employee, how much does the employee contribute on the medical?
It's different across, but 20% in the 20 to 22% range.
20 to 22.
Yeah.
When does it finalize? June, July? The medical.
The medical will probably be around May timeframe, May, June.
After the vote.
Yeah, it'll be, I mean, we'll get close in April, May, but again, it depends upon, again, our claims. So let's go back. So we started an HDHP, which is the high deductible health plan, last September. So it takes time for the claims to what they call mature, and for them to be able then to use them in an actuarial model that they can then process out as to what the costs are going to be for premiums. So they're telling me right now that because we only have so many, like 6 months in, or not even 6 months, 5 months in, that our claims are not mature, and so they really can't give us a good number. So that's why they told me to use the 11% cap. But I think as our claims mature, and part of the issue thing is too, we're going to bring in two of the hopefully bring in the paraprofessionals and the custodians who are in the old plan, not in the HDHP, which is a much higher cost. We're going to hopefully bring them in through negotiations, which will then lower our cost. And then we'll have a full 12 months for everyone else that went on in September next year. So because they have 2 months on the old plan and 10 months on the new plan for this budget year. And then this 25-26 is going to have a lower cost there. So that's why I'm confident that it's going to be less than 11%. How much less? I put 8. I'm hoping it's a little less than that. So we'll see. Hopefully in the next few months, I'll be able to give you a better number. But again,
So
that's
your medical cost will be, every line that you have medical expense, that'll be the net. The net of what the employees paid.
Correct.
So it's always the net.
It's always the net. And then the next big line, electricity, fun topic we've had in the finance group. I've also there's analysis in the back here. I put an analysis in there how I came up with this number. Through increased usage. Again, we're air conditioning the building, which we never did before. I've increased the usage that I'm projecting out, and so it's gonna be up $250,000 just based on the rates. Again, this year it's up significantly. This does not include, I know, Jack, we've talked, I know you've been talking about the on-bill, no interest loan that Eversource gave for this project. It's $1 million, so just so everyone's aware, there's $1 million loan out there for the project that happened in this building. And we're supposed to pay it on our bill, $200,000 a year for the next 5 years. That's not, so we've been talking with the town, I've talked with Jim Oliva, we've been talking about how we handle that, because that's $16,666 a month that we haven't budgeted for this year. And talking with the finance committee from the board, we were talking with the town as to who's gonna pick that up. So I know that's in negotiations right now, but I just want to say that's not in this budget. So that's a risk that's also there. Also,
It was understood that it was going to be the Board of Education, we're getting the reduced rate. Somehow how that $1 million was figured in. It's crazy, but, it was considered the Board of Education's, pay that long off, I don't know.
Chuck, when was it considered? Because I don't remember that in the discussions when we were doing the HVAC. I mean, maybe it was in behind closed doors, but I don't
It
remember.
was behind closed doors, but it's always in the proposal. Okay, the $1 million. The 5-year interest-free on-bill loan. They call it, okay, so it was always gonna come out of the Board of Education's electric bill. Okay, you got the gain you were gonna get on this electricity savings you're gonna have. Okay, if there's gonna be such a thing, that's where it would be. You would pay so much less of an electric bill, that it would be offset by you have to pick up pay back that loan to $1 million. That's the way it was initially put. When I written it that way.
So I have no idea. I was not here at that time. Jack, I think it was, when was that done?
Pardon?
When was that done?
Well, that was when we started Great Oak to put the HVAC in, the proposal going way back. And that's where it was. I was not in the negotiation on this at all, so I don't know. But that was way back at, let's see if I got the contract.
That would have been approved in the fall, in the winter of 2024, 23. So last year, because we started the project in January, a year ago.
But the assumption is, and I've worked on energy projects before, is that your energy savings pays for the 5-year.
That's what's supposed to
cost.
happen.
That's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't, then now you're using it more.
Right.
And the calculation is thrown off, so there's that additional cost. But
I've got July on the contract here.
Right.
With, Air taps. This was written in the period 7/31/24.
The overall cost of the project, we proposed the project with the town. We did not, as a Board of Education and a school district, did not recommend taking out an Eversource loan in order to pay for them. So that was recommended by Herman and the building committee at the time. And how that finance arrived at the assumption that the Board of Education would be the one that's paying for that loan. That was never a formal discussion that took place either with our committee or the board at that time. So I'm not too sure if that was ever fully assigned one or the other. At least I was never part in any conversations around that.
No,
You know,
it's
I'm
crazy.
speaking to shake hand right now.
Who's gonna calculate this? Who's gonna out? Because, we have a hard enough time just following the appropriation itself. Did we get the monies in? Did we spend it? Did we come in under budget? Okay, we got that. We don't know with this electric rates and how this is gonna get back. I noticed that when we did the Quaker Farms, that's left out. Okay, it's pure as $5 million. We get $2,593,000 in grants, and the rest of it belongs to the town, $3,256,000. Period. There's no $1 million in there. So that was how this was arranged at that time.
Yeah.
And I'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, maybe Howard and I can go down and talk with people, but it's probably isn't the right venue for this conversation.
At least to be continued.
Yes,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
we'll get to the bottom of it and if you want to help Jack, we'd be more than happy.
I'll get help.
happy to have
I'll say, also, make sure the $1 million, I never I know nothing about getting the $1 million.
So
We never got
Dr.
it in the
Miller,
first place.
Howard and I, and maybe with Deb's help, because I don't think I was on the board when, was this before or after the?
You had just been, voted into the board when this was all in the process of being finalized.
So let's, maybe I can have you come in and see what's going on, so, because you were board chair at the time, so we'll get, all four of us will get together and we'll get with who we need to get with.
But then just so everyone's clear, that 200,000 is not in this budget, right? So that just, I understand that. Also, our understanding is there's the fees that are created, everyone's electric bills to go up are gonna end in April. So again, it's a risk if they don't, but that's another $159,000, get the number, the numbers, it's 150,000 round number of risk that is not in this budget. So that's how we get to, because if this budget had those numbers in, it would be $400,000 higher, basically.
Give me the 150 again.
So there's two things that are not in, so right now in the budget, we've budgeted for electricity, $850,000. Not in there is a $200,000 loan. Okay, so that's not in there. And it would be another, I'm just gonna say $200,000, that round numbers, 200,000, that the fees that the state of Connecticut added onto everyone's electricity bill.
Community fees.
And I think I worked out to be $189,000, that's why I'm getting there at two numbers. Community fees are, because they're supposed to end in April of this year. And so therefore they won't be in next year's budget, so we didn't budget for them. If they renew them, that's a risk. So that's another, so this budget would be $400,000 higher just on those two items.
So you've got 4 months of community fees built into the budget with 8 months of community fee risk if they reinstate.
No, because it says it's by April this year. So it's-
Oh, this year, not
Yes.
next year. Okay.
25, yeah.
Got it, my fault.
Yeah.
So we are paying for those extra expenses out of this year's budget right now that we're not accounting for.
Okay.
That would be electricity then. I'm just gonna go down, so one of the big items here, the big reduction tuition, so. Similar, in essence, last year, any of the tuition that was from the students going to Nonawag, we have 46 students that go to Nonawag. There was a threat out there from those districts to charge us 100% of the tuition. Instead of the 58% that by law they're supposed to charge us. And so last year we had to budget in addition for that. So that's why you're seeing a large reduction, because this year they've guaranteed it's gonna be at the 50%, 58% rate. So so we don't have to budget that extra as a risk. So that's why you see the large $130,000 reduction for that line. Heating oil, we just had a $46,000, that's just usage, $3.20 a gallon. I don't think there's anything else, anyone else, questions? Go ahead.
When's our contract up with All Star?
We just signed it
I
a
think we
year
have 2
ago.
years, right?
Yeah.
3 years left.
5.
I think it's a.
We're in year two of the new contract right
It's a
now.
5-year contract, so it's 3 more years. After this.
What? We're good?
Yeah, that's a great budget.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, well done. Thank you.
So that's all the cost centers. The goal tonight was once again to do an overview of the budget, give you some opportunities here directly from the principals, directors, coordinators. Start thinking about what your questions are. Between now and the next board meeting, there will probably be a finance committee person to be able to dive into this further. If you have questions, please go through the book. There's a lot of details in here. Send those questions to Steve and I so that we can start putting together responses to you. We'll figure out the best way to get those responses back out. And like we always do at the next board meeting in February, we'll have an opportunity to have this as an agenda item again. Most years, the vote for the budget takes place the second meeting in February. There have been some years, it might have been last year, that the board was ready to vote on the budget at the first meeting in February. So it all depends on the type of questions you have, and the amount of work that we still need to do in order for a reduction that you want before we send it on to the Board of Finance. And Steve, is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think the process is going well. It's a great book and we're gonna continue to refine and look at line items and take feedback.
I have a question. Is it possible to get a budget that shows where we are to be? Because everything shows adopted and proposed. Can we get a line that shows where we are to be on the budget?
So where we are, what's officially encumbered,
Yeah, just so we can kind of figure out. It makes it just more understandable of where the numbers are. I think it just would be a little. easier.
You want a total or you want the?
Whatever's been paid, whatever's encumbered in that line, whatever, I mean, I just, if, let's say transportation, 75% encumbered, just so we can see what the numbers are.
Okay.
I just think it would be easier to. It's great the way it is, but I personally.
You just want another row. in
Yeah,
the-
yeah,
another column,
2024, 25,
Encumbered as of a certain.
yeah, encumbered, whatever, however you wanna word it.
So as we close out tonight, the budget, once again, is the compilation of hours and hours of work. This is not just one individual. We go back to our teachers, we go back to our secretaries, we go back to our professionals, we ask, what is it you need in the budget? So this is built from the ground up from our stakeholders in the school district. Our principals, our directors, our coordinators take that, they build their budgets, and then it comes to the district. We then hear from each call center, and we put it together. So what you see here tonight, when you heard tonight, is the synthesis of all that work district-wide. This is not just one person putting a budget together. This is an entire district's thought collaboratively put together that forms the hopes, the visions, the desires, the dreams for the school district for next year. So, and I thank our administrators, our coordinators, directors for being here today for the presentations. Thank the Board of Finance for being here tonight to be part of this journey with us as we
I would
start.
say with this book is great. You guys do a great job on the book, easy to read. And it's a good starting point for our board and your board to, till we get together to the next meeting.
Thank you so much. And again, thank you for the Board of Education for allowing this joint session to take place with the Board of Finance. I think that this was a very good evening to dive into next year's budget. Thank you.
So before we adjourn, I'd also like to say thank you to everybody that showed up, district wide, Dr. Miller, Megan and Howard, and thanks, the Board of Finance for showing up, thanks. And if you have any questions, ask them, okay? Do I have a motion to adjourn? So, all right, all right, all's in favor?